Hello, my name is Allie Ganson, and I will be presenting to you the Matthew B.W. case. This was a hearing between Fort Madison Community School District and Great River AEA 16 versus James W., who is Matthew's father, on September 21st, 1999. At the time of this hearing, Matthew was 17 years old, but the court case describes a long history for this young man. He had received special education services since he was 4 years old, and his initial IEP included goals for language development, readiness activities, and improving social skills. Every year, it went on to describe the annual IEP, the review of data, and then the new goal setting for each year. Lots of times having to do with listening, language development, things of that nature. It wasn't until his annual IEP meeting during the fourth grade that it was recommended that he get an evaluation with Dr. Hartson. Um, Teachers were starting to see sort of a decline in his behavior at school, becoming sort of withdrawn, having a hard time with attention to tasks. Mom also shared at this point that she was going to have him evaluated at Mayo Clinic as well, understanding that all of these costs would be assumed by her, the parent. In January of 1994, Matthew's parents divorced due to marital issues and violence on the father's part, and he was diagnosed with PTSD. So a lot of that was seen to have an effect on his decline at school with the attention issues and things like that. Matthew had many educational evaluations done during his time in school. His mom was a great advocate for those things. And during his schooling, he was also diagnosed with ADD along with the PTSD. In 1995, he, for a period of time, stopped attending school and was diagnosed with major depressive disorders and PTSD once again. Mrs. W. also took him at this time to Mayo Clinic, which she found the findings there to be unsatisfactory and not as helpful as she was hoping. So at that time, Mrs. W. had Matthew admitted to child psychiatry services at the University of Iowa Hospitals. This stay and evaluation lasted from February 19th, 1999 until April 30th, 1996, excuse me. When he was let go from that placement, in which he was being evaluated, medicated to find out exactly how to help him be successful with his mental issues that he was having. They found also that he had OCD. He was struggling with quite a few things at that point. When he was let go from that setting, Dr. Hartson and his mom, Mrs. W., had many discussions on how to help him be successful in transition back to school. They felt that it might be best for him to be away from family since that was the major stressor in his life and seemed to be creating lots of these OCD tendencies and lack of speaking, really withdrawn behaviors. So their suggestion was that Matthew attend a military academy in Missouri, which he did for the year, and then eventually made his way back. When this hearing was happening, he was a junior at Fort Madison High School, receiving resource services. So, with all of that being said, the issue for this hearing, the single issue was the obligation of the Fort Madison School District and AEA number 16 to reimburse costs for diagnostic and evaluation services that were conducted for Matthew B.W. on the following dates. So he wanted to be reimbursed for the December 1995 evaluation at Mayo Clinic, the February 15th, 1996 evaluation at the University of Iowa, and the period of time from February 19th to April 30th at the University of Iowa Hospital and Clinics. Some of the laws that were brought up and are very applicable to this case, first being the provisions of an appropriate educational program, U.S. Code 1401-25 states that if the purpose of the hospitalization is to provide an appropriate educational program, the services are special education and must be provided by the school district. Special education is to be conducted in the classroom, in the home, in hospitals and institutions, and in other settings. To support that as well, Clovis Unified School District versus California Office of Administration stated that if the services provided in the hospital setting did not comport with established educational goals of the IEP, or the hospitalization was not an appropriate educational placement, reimbursement was denied. So if the hospitalization was in order to provide educational programs, it could be reimbursed. As far as diagnosis and evaluation, medical services shall be for diagnostic and evaluation purpose only, as may be required to assist a child with a disability to benefit from school education or from special education. And then response to medical crisis. The Sally versus St. Tammany's Parish School Board stated that if a student is hospitalized for either medical or psychiatric reasons, for example, to stabilize the student's health, the school district is not financially responsible for the services. So, as you may have already come to the conclusion yourself, the final decision in this case was that the services that were provided to Matthew B.W. at Mayo Clinic and the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics were medical services and not reimbursable as special education or related services. My personal response is that I do agree with the ruling in this case. Matthew was provided his free and appropriate public education throughout his time in school. I did find our administrative code 280 41.5021C states that independent educational evaluations will be provided at public expense. But the very important thing to underline and understand here is that it is educational evaluations. The evaluations that were being done for Matthew in this case were medical in nature. Mrs. W. does testify that when she took Matthew to the Mayo Clinic and the University of Iowa clinics, it was because of medical emergencies. Therefore, these were not considered educational evaluations. So therefore is not covered under the IEP related services. An implication for future leaders, something that I really resounded with me is the fact that mental health and the mental health of the students that we serve is extremely important and being talked about quite a bit. So for us as future leaders, it's important that we remember that students hospitalized for mental health evaluations are not considered a related service through the IEP. Therefore, not the responsibility of the school district to reimburse. Also important to understand that parents do have the right to request outside evaluations if they are educational evaluations, and those types of evaluations would be covered by the school district or AEA, and parents would be reimbursed for those types of evaluations. So important to remember the distinction between the two. And here are some questions to think about. As mental health continues to be an issue in our schools, what are some related services that can be provided to students with IEPs? Number 2, are there students in your school with IEPs that you think could benefit from school psychology who are not currently receiving it? Follow-up question to that is, why do you think these students aren't receiving these related services that are afforded to them through their IEPs. And then the last one is simply, do you have any other thoughts that occurred to you as you watched this presentation? All right, hope you enjoyed. Thank you.